Should independent writers try to get to the mainstream? Is it failure if you don't get to the mainstream? I got a comment in one of my videos recently that sparked this question, and I want to go into it. I'll write a response, but I want to actually go into this question because I think it's a really good one, and it speaks to the psychology and desires of the creator. Hey everybody, this is Perch. In comics, there's been this narrative for a while. And I like when people say narrative. There's been this narrative of subverting fan expectations in a consistent dialogue. I could speak buzzwords with the best of them, guys. You have no idea. But there's been this narrative for a while that you haven't made it in comics unless you've made it to the mainstream. And then that changed a bit when it was like, well, image is a viable option. There's a lot of good creator rights here. You don't have to make it to the mainstream anymore. But then somebody pointed out, image is kind of the mainstream. Image is the mainstream of the indies. And given that more of the graphic novels and more of the collected editions that sold came from Image than the big two, I don't think you can call Image an indie anymore. Image is the mainstream. So, and then there's like a second tier of mainstream, which is your IDWs, your Dark Horse, your Boom, your Vault, your Antarctic Press, all those guys. Then you have another under that, which is kind of your one-offs, your people just go guerrilla publishing style, like Good Larry King does. I think that there's a bunch of different tiers, and so when I get this question, I've got this from creators before saying, "Hey, you know, do you think that I have to be in Marvel or DC in order to have made it in comics?" And my answer has always been the same, and I think it's a straightforward answer, and that's it depends on you. It depends on your definition of made it. That's a personal definition. It's not an industry accepted definition. There's not a one right answer to that. It's what you decide you're interested in. I mean, put it this way: one of the dialogues I've had with people before, and it's one I have with myself, and it's one I'm honestly kind of struggling with in my life as a person. Maybe I can go into some personal stuff here a little bit. But how much money is enough money? When do you retire? I have friends who got $500,000 of net worth to their name, and they were like, "I'm rich," and they bought a house down in Georgia and in northern Georgia, not Atlanta, Georgia, and they got they live frugally and they're happy. I mean, they're happy in life. They in their minds they made it. They made it big. And then there are other people I know who they start little companies, they sell the companies, they make a couple $1 million off of the sale of that company, and they're like, well, yeah, I finally made it to middle class, and I'm like, you made it to middle class, and your net worth is about $3.5 million. I mean, is that middle class anymore? I don't think it is. Now, granted, I live in the Seattle area, and the whole economics of the area is wildly screwed up. Just I'll say that, but my point here is saying it's all in your perception. There are people who have 20 to 30 million dollars to their name, and they're like, it's not enough. I'm not rich yet. I've got to get to 50. I've got to get to 100. It's what is in your mind. There's people who live comfortable. I mean, I have school teachers who are friends of mine who live in other states, and they're clocking in at about 38,000 to 40,000 a year, right, for that job, and they're in poor areas, and they're happy. They're like, I'm doing what I love. And then I've got others who are like, you know what? I'm never going to be a Kardashian. I'm pissed. I'm not doing what I love. And so the answer to a comic artist or a comic creator is, are you happy? If you're happy, then congratulations, you've made it. You don't need to have Marvel trade dress on your comic in order to be successful. You don't need to, be picked to do the next big event. I mean, I've read some amazing indie comics, some comics by unknown people nobody has heard of, and they're doing their thing, and the creator is happy, and they're living a happy, happy life. And I think, in my mind, that these people, in many cases, are more successful than the Donny Cates and Brian Michael Bendises of the world, who have their name on comics and they're selling 100,000 things, and they get Bendis is coming, and you get a big You get a big promotion with your name on it. But then I run into some of these people at cons, and they look miserable. I mean, they're happy too. They're doing their thing, but I mean, everybody has good days and everybody has bad days. Whether you work for the big two or the big three, or you work on your own guerrilla publishing style book, your days vary. I do not think you have to make it, quote unquote, to Marvel or DC to be successful, to be considered. And I also don't think that should be everybody's arc. I think that whether or not you want to move your comic publishing trajectory into Marvel or DC really depends on if you're happy. If your goal is you've got some stories in mind, you want to tell those stories, maybe you get rich someday from those stories. Maybe it catches on and it goes viral in the old publishing sense, and you get a movie option to your thing. You're living a baller life with your independent comic. That's the cards you want to play, and you're happy doing it. Good for you. I mean, it just full stop. Period. I think that you have made it, and you should be proud, and you don't need to go any further or anywhere else. Actually, maybe I'm even using the wrong language here. It's not any further, because going to the big two is not necessarily a step up in your career. I mean, I think that Donny Cates did some stuff on the indie scene that was big, and people liked it, and it was considered his best work. And there are plenty of people who like his work at Marvel. Venom is great and everything else, but there's others who believe that his best work was back when he was doing the indies and relatively unknown. That was his best stuff. And that's true of every comic writer, every comic creator. You have people who say, well, their best work was before they made it big. So the fans are going to like you based on what they like. They're not going to like you based on if you're a Marvel or DC property, if you're working for them. And I think that's a healthy way to look at comics. It's a healthy way to look at your career. And whether you're doing comics or you're doing anything, I mean, if you're a software developer and you're doing a bunch of startups and you build cool things that people love and you're happy, great. You don't need to work for Google. You don't need to go work for Facebook and, farm Russian ads for President Trump. You don't need to do those things. You can just be happy with your little software development career. Because to you, it's not little. It's big. It is your love, your life. And I think it's as simple as that. No, I don't think there's any metric in comics, and I think the biggest douchebags, frankly, in the industry, who insist that you have to have this kind of imaginary, award placed upon you for being a Marvel creator or a DC creator. It's like those people are dubious. And if you're a comic creator and you're plodding along and you've got somebody whispering in your ear, you really haven't made it until you've gone to Marvel, kick that person to the curb, baby. That came out sounding very awkward, because it is. I mean, I'm a pretty much white guy saying dumb things. I don't know what I'm saying. I took a left turn there somewhere. Um, there you have it. I mean, there's really not a whole lot else to say. I can continue to stretch this video out, but it is as simple as that. It's be happy where you are. There's no requirement in the industry. There's plenty of creators who win awards and have fan recognition and are happy in their career who never make it to Marvel, never make it to DC, and they're perfectly comfortable in that space. And that should be you as well. That's at the end of the day what's going to make you happy. Because frankly, if you're purely at it for the money, if your goal to get to the big two is for that sweet, sweet cash, then you should take a complete sideways step into game development or into production art for movie houses or into something the hell else. Because if your goal is to be rich and that's why you think you should make it to Marvel or DC, out. Get out. Get out now. You're in the wrong business. You picked the wrong career, son. Get to somewhere else in your life. Financial gain is not the way to go. And the distance between, say, a unknown indie writer and a Marvel writer and somebody who helps convert scripts or helps, create, has their own books or writes. I mean, here's the best possible example, because this is, an unknown indie creator writes comics here in the Seattle area. Modest success, no big publishers, but sold some things, and people, when you go to the con, people know who this guy was. Everything else, gets one writing gig at Marvel for a backup story in an annual. It pays peanuts. I mean, it was slightly better than what he was making with his indie gig. He got it as a friendship job. He was early in his career, but got a little bit more cash. Waited for his next gig, didn't see it coming from Marvel. Thought about going back to write some indie comics, and then was offered a tech writer job at Microsoft. Okay, a tech writer job is basically where you're writing technical documentation. You're writing help files for something boring. You're teaching somebody how to use PowerPoint in a manual that probably nobody's going to read, and it sucks. His salary, his money that he took home from comics went to something like, I think he made $8,000 one year, and they did the thing with Marvel, and he made $10,000, and then he had his tech job at Microsoft for $120,000 yearly plus benefits. It wasn't even close. So my point is, if you're out for cash, you're definitely in the wrong spot. This is and getting to success, quote unquote success for the big two, is not going to be anywhere like getting to success by going and just joining a startup as a writer, or a game company as a production artist, or there's easier routes if it's a cash you're into. Anyway, what do you think? Are you one of those people who believe that you haven't really made it until you've written for Marvel and have kind of changed your mind, or maybe I haven't changed your mind, or do you care? Would love to hear your thoughts on the matter. Please leave me a comment below. Would absolutely love to hear what you have to say. People say interesting things in the comments, and that's why I was excited to do this video, because I got this nice comment from Mario Green on a video, and it spawned this video. So thanks. Please leave comments, because I like doing stuff like this. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at Comic Perch, and thanks for listening.